And no one actually believes it. Yeah, it's total relativism is really, really difficult. Yeah, let's get to where we were at here. Let's go here. Okay, here's a reminder of the definition, right? This is what you just saw in that little quizzy quiz. So all truth is relative to the individual society. Other ways of putting that is all truth is placed in the subjective category, and that means that truth is a matter of preference. Okay? Now, I don't want you to think relativism is bad, okay, as we'll continue to see, but I don't want you to think that it's silly. I mean, in some ways, it's like, what? But in other ways, when we say things like preference, we mean like, oh, preference, I like the color blue, and that's right. That's not what, it's not just trivial stuff. What they mean by preference is, this is what I really think, right? This is what I really think. This is how I see the world, and therefore, that is what is right. That is what is true. Okay? So don't think of preference just as trivial. It could be preference in like really big, important stuff, right? But what we're talking about is preference in the sense that how you see the world, what you prefer, what you accept, okay, what you're down with, okay, on all sorts of levels, trivial and non-trivial, that's what is really true. That's what's really real, according to relativism. So that means then necessarily that everybody's going to have a different take on that. Right? Truth is, as many people are in this room, that's how many different definitions of what truth really is. Okay? That's what relativism is claiming. So don't trivialize it when we use the word preference, because I know this just means like, well, do you prefer fries with that or not? I mean, we're talking about deeper things than that, okay? Okay. The main fundamental flaw, remember, in relativism is that they confuse, there should be a distinction between facts and opinions, but relativism squishes those two together into one thing. And it says your opinion is the fact. Okay? Now notice, it's not saying that it's a fact that you have an opinion. Okay? But that's true and should be true no matter what truth theory you are good with. Okay? You should have an opinion. But what it's saying is that your opinion literally becomes what that thing is, just because it's your opinion. That's the only criteria it has to meet. Okay? So if your opinion is that truth is fill in the blank, then truth literally is that just because it is your opinion. That's the only criteria it has to meet. Okay? It's a decently radical view when you really look at it. Okay, we talked about total relativism, how that's rare. Many people believe religious or moral relativism, and we gave some examples. The problem with this is, without going too far into ethics or into philosophy of religion, the problem with that is you have claims about moral things and you have claims that religious systems make that are contrary to each other. So people will say, listen, you do that religion, you do this religion, you do you. Okay? But the problem is all of them are right. Most people say all of them are right. Why? Because they're your opinion, you do you. Right? The problem is that they can't all be right. You can all have your own opinion. You can all follow your own different religion, but they can't all be right because they make competing claims about the same thing. One religion says there is no God. One religion says there is. Both of those cannot be right. They can both be wrong, but they cannot both be right. You can have an opinion. People can follow both of those, but they can't both be right. Does that make sense to you? Notice I'm not saying don't have an opinion or everyone should agree on opinions. I'm not saying that. You should have your own opinion. I'm just saying they can't both be truthful. They can't both be right at the same time and in the same sense. We're about to talk about that here more in depth. Okay? So, the critique, right, we went through this. It doesn't explain truths we already know, right? Mathematical truths like 2 + 3 = 5. Relativism, what would relativism say about that? Yes, it equals what you feel like it is, okay? The checking account thing is the one that gets me, right?
Did you check your balance?
Yeah, it was not $1 million. It was about $1 million short of $1 million. Okay, let's talk about this. Now, I know you don't remember the law of logic because we haven't done logic yet. Normally, I do logic before I do truth, but I decided to reverse it this year just to see what would happen. So I'm conducting a little experiment on you, but that's okay. You'll be fine. So there is a law of logic that's called, this is super important, okay? It's called the law of non-contradiction. The law of non-contradiction. This law tells us that a thing can't both be true and not true, or true and false, at the same time and in the same sense. Both of those criteria are important. Okay, so again, the law of non-contradiction tells us that a thing can't be both true and false at the same time and in the same sense. Okay, example, it cannot be both raining and not raining at the same time and in the same sense. Normally at this point somebody goes, well, what about another part of the world? That's not in the same sense. It's at the same time, but not in the same sense. Cool? You down with that? This is really important. Most of the errors that we make and most of the disagreements that we have with each other stem from a couple of things, and this is one of them. We assume that because it's somebody's opinion, then you just live and let live, we're all good. And we easily get from, hey, I'm glad we have opinions, to everybody's right. But you cannot make, that's a huge misstep. Okay, that's not just like a step toward progress, it's like a step off a cliff. Okay? You can't both be right. You can both be wrong. We can be together there, right? But you can't both be right if you have competing claims, true and false, about the same thing in the same sense at the same time. Okay? You down?
Yeah. It kind of reminds me of it kind of makes me think of Schrodinger's cat.
Not tracking. Not tracking.
Not tracking.
Cat in the box.
The cat in the box that,
Schrodinger's cat.
yeah, Schrodinger's cat.
Oh! Okay, yeah.
If the cat is either alive or
Yes.
dead, or not alive, that kind of reminds me of the law of
Yes.
non-contradiction.
Yes, exactly. Yes. Yeah. Okay, you good? So, well, how does this jive with relativism then? Before I go on, try and think ahead. Connect this to relativism. Does relativism abide by this law or
It
no?
doesn't.
No.
How so? Explain that to me.
Because in relativism, pretty much whatever you think is true. Like if you think
no
it's true, then it's true. So if you think it's raining and not raining at the same time in the same sense, then by relativism standards, that would be true.
Okay, what if I think it's raining and you don't think it is?
Then
Relativism says they're both true.
Yeah, relativism says that you're both right.
There is no false in relativism.
That's correct.
Unless it's on data.
That's correct. There is no false. All the answer is always yes in relativism, which makes it really appealing, right? You are never wrong in relativism, ever.
I don't like that.
that can't be true.
Why don't you like that?
Because that's kind of like how we find out new stuff, is that we get proven
If
wrong.
I'm doing
Anybody
something-
thinking about that essay you read?
But how are you not?
The value of
saying things that are
uncertainty?
never wrong?
Yeah.
Huh?
You think of something, you just observe something.
Okay, so let's apply this law. You guys are already there, but let's apply this law to relativism. So relativism's claim, right? Remember, all truth is relative or / just a matter of personal preference. Truth, okay? Truth, not your favorite season, not your favorite ice cream. Truth is a matter of personal preference. Let me ask you this. Does that statement claim to be true? The statement, all truth is relative, just a matter of personal preference. Does that statement claim to be true?
I would say no.
Why do you say no?
Because if it was true, then it'd be science, not philosophy.
No, not necessarily. Does relativism claim that this claim is true?
According to relativism,
Okay.
it is true.
Okay,
But
good.
according to how the world works, it's not true.
If the statement is true, what does that result in?
Means that they also claim that all truth is not relative and is not in a matter of personal
Right.
preference.
Good. Now this is bend your brain a little bit, but look, if this is true, and so we live in a world, let's say, where relativism is what the deal is, okay? And then we have this claim that says, hey, all truth is just a matter of personal preference. What at this point, under relativism, could I prefer to do?
Whatever you want.
I could prefer to think that that's not true.
Yeah, and that would be true because according to relativism, that would be true. So
Which defeats
it
its
would
own,
dispute
it defeats its
itself.
own claim. You see that?
Yeah.
Under its own claim, I could prefer for that to be false, which caves in the theory.
Except for when it only cave it in for yourself, the relativism. So
No, because,
because-
well, even worse, actually. It would mean that the theory was both legit and not legit at the same time.
That is a
Yeah. Paradox is a nice way of putting it. Complete BS would be the way that I would put it. I mean, right? There's no,
It doesn't work.
then where do you lie? Okay, so then what rules do we follow? Nah, right? Do you see how it all of a sudden is just like, comes this weird animal that's like,
Equals anarchy.
pretty much.
Yeah.
Pretty much. Okay, if the statement is false, what does that mean? If the statement, all truth is relative / just a matter of personal preference, if that's not true, what does that mean?
Makes people be wrong.
Yeah, it means, what does that mean for relativism?
It means relativism.
Relativism is false, right? Because that's the central claim.
Yeah.
So look, if it's true, that means it's possible that relativism could be false because I could reject that claim. If it's so, it's possible it could be false. If the statement is false, it's possible it could be false. So either way, relativism is bad.
That is like the definition of paradox.
Yeah, it's bad. It's what's called a self-defeating claim. It defeats itself. That's like a claim that's like a claim like this: all English sentences are 5 words or less. There's 8 words in that sentence. Okay, that's a self-defeating claim, right? It claims something to be true, but in the claim itself, it defeats what it's claiming. Does that make sense? That's the same thing as what's happening here. Okay? You good? Some of you are like starting to twitch a little bit, but that's okay. That's okay. Okay, remember these deals? Explanatory scope, explanatory power, plausibility, agreement, and simplicity. You remember this? We went over each of these. This is what makes a good theory. Okay? So what we're going to do now is grade relativism out on this scorecard. And we're going to use this scorecard for each of the theories. Okay? Because we're trying to figure out what's a good theory, so let's hold them all by the same standard and go with it that way. Okay, explanatory scope. Does this theory explain all or most truths?
yes.
Yeah.
What do y'all think? Got some yeses. Don't just wait for me to put it up there. Think about it. Yeah. It explains all or most truths.
No, because it doesn't have objective truth.
Yeah, it only explains relative truth.
Well, it has objective truth that you think it does. So it explains everything, even its own demise. There's no false. If there's nothing false, then it has to explain all truth.
Okay, if a theory, quote unquote, explains its own demise, is that allowing for all or most truths?
Mhm.
If it caves in on itself? No. Guys, no. Opposite of that. Okay, no. Remember, we even talked about this with the math, right? The physical law. It doesn't address those. It doesn't leave space for those. Okay? The things that we know for sure. Right? It doesn't leave space for that. It doesn't address most truths. It only addresses subjective truths. And even that's pretty crappy. Okay? Tracking? How about does it give a better explanation for the data? No, that's pretty clear. I mean, it's a big fat question mark right there because what even is it saying? It doesn't give a better explanation.
Then what? We haven't went over anything about relativism.
That's true. But it doesn't explain it well to
No,
begin
it does.
with, right? But that's why the question mark. I mean, we don't really know what it says and we don't have anything to compare it to. Yeah, so keep it in mind. So far, it's not looking good in my perspective. But, okay? Is it easy to believe? No, it's not. Okay, most of the time I push that too quick. Most of the time people say, well, yeah, I mean, whatever you think is true. It's just easy. I didn't say easy to understand. I said easy to believe / live by.
No.
Not really, right? Because then what we live in is a world where competing claims can both be true at the same time and in the same way, and that's difficult. That's difficult to navigate. In one sense, you could be say, well, hell with everybody else. I'm just doing my own thing. Like, let's just do it. I don't really care about if somebody else has a competing belief. Whatever. I'm just doing me, right? Do you really want to live in a world where everybody thinks like that?
It's kind of how we live.
It is kind of how we live, and we're going to talk about that here in a second. Yeah. Is that a good? Do you think the world could be a better place? Do you think you could be a better person?
Yeah, we were.
Okay. So agreement. Does it fit with your firmly established beliefs? No, we've already seen this, right? Not with your checking account, not with physical laws, right? Things that you already know to be true, doesn't jive. Doesn't jive. In one sense, you could be like, well, yeah, because I make up the rules. Yeah, but you could make up some really whack rules, right? And under relativism, it'd be sweet. And that we know that's not how the world works. Okay. And then simplicity. Is this theory simple?
Yeah. I think it's too simple
How so?
because it doesn't have any established boundaries or laws. It's just-
Yeah, so because there's no boundaries, it actually gets more complicated, does it not? There's all sorts of exceptions, and now you've got to work through trying to grasp
Yes,
hold of a theory that allows for competing truth claims to be true at the same time.
Yeah, but technically there's no exceptions, no rejections because anything's true. How can you reject something if your rejection is true? If you're not rejecting it because it's still one truth.
But what if you got other ideas through that
And they're
and also
true.
contradict
How
each other?
are you rejecting anything that you think is true?
I mean, are paradoxes simple?
Yeah, but yeah, if
But
you,
the paradox is simple, right? I mean, it's like, okay, we can state it in a sentence, right? But the theory, like having it be the way that the world is, does that produce a simple way of going about things, or does it create more problems?
we don't know.
It creates more problems. It creates more problems. Anything, I mean, think about it this way. Anything that is self-defeating, internally self-defeating, is going to create more problems than solutions.
So that it's not going to be simple because
It's not simple? No, it's not simple. Okay. Okay, so there's our scorecard. Are you good? Any massive disagreements with this analysis? Okay. All right. Now, let's take a brief excursus on this relativism thing. We won't do this for every theory, but on this relativism one, because you guys have rightly identified that it's so pervasive, right? It's bad. Relativism is bad, but it does have a few little bright spots, okay? It does explain subjective truths almost too well, right? Everything's a subjective truth, okay? And it does seem to provide a sense of security. It does. Like we mentioned before, you are never wrong under relativism. And the answer in relativism is always yes. Yes, do it. Yes, it's a good idea. Yes, that's a solid way to think. Yeah, it always is. You're always right. That is really appealing. Listen, in a world that's super confusing and really messed up and sometimes just very weird, okay? Something like this is very appealing. Very appealing. What if it is think about all the questions you asked just about your educational career, right? Things like money, right? Finances, okay? Time, scheduling, choices about careers and courses to take. What if the answer to all of those things was always, yep, gonna succeed, gonna have enough money, gonna have enough time? What if the answer was always that? That's really appealing, is it not? Really appealing. But it is a bit of a false security. It's a bit of a false security, okay? Just because something says yes all the time. We kind of talked about this, where you said, I don't want to be wrong. I don't want to be right all the time. There is this idea that we learn not just through our successes, but through our failures, right? Through our incorrect assumptions, through our false conclusions, right? We learn things by bumping into the walls of stuff, not just always succeeding all the time. Plus, it's a false security because it's not a real theory if it implodes in on itself like a dying star, right? If it makes a claim that's ultimately self-defeating, that's not a very trustworthy claim for a theory. Okay? Okay. Next theory. You ready? Changing gears a little bit. Next theory. Okay, this is called coherentism, and I've got these two pictures up there so you can kind of try to get a visual and, to sort these theories out from each other. Okay, with coherentism, think of a web or think of a puzzle. Okay? Coherentism, I like the web a little bit better because coherentism is all about things fitting together in such a way that in two ways. Okay? Fitting together in two ways. One, they have to be supported by a structure, but they also have to do their part in supporting the structure themselves. So they can't just be a freeloader out there on the end. They have to integrate into a structure, beliefs do under coherentism. They have to integrate into a structure in such a way that they help support the structure and they are supported by the structure. Is that clear-ish? Okay. So think about that's why I like the web. The puzzle works too, though, if we had a few more pieces. But like, right, when you put a puzzle piece in, it fits inside the puzzle, hopefully, on the right piece. It fits inside the puzzle, so it is supported by the other pieces around it, right? But it also contributes to the picture as a whole, so it does its part to support the whole structure as well. You get that? Same thing with a spider web, right? If you took a little bit of this out, see all these little like nodes, right, where you've got things coming in and going out, okay? These are doing two duties, right? They are being supported by the strands around it, but they're also supporting the other strands too. Make sense? That's how tightly integrated these things are, okay? And that's what you need to think of with coherentism. It doesn't just need to work, that's pragmatism, okay? It needs to fit. It needs to fit. Okay, so here's the claim about coherentism. Here's the central claim. Something is true if it coheres with a web of a particular person's or society's set of beliefs. Something is true if it coheres with a web of a particular person's or society's set of beliefs. That means that entering beliefs, right, beliefs that are coming in for a landing, must be supported by other beliefs that are already there. When they are true. Okay? Remember, we're talking about actual truth here, not just what I think is true or what I like. We're talking about coherentism says something is actually true if it fits and is supported by your other beliefs. Okay, do you know what cohere means? Do you know what adhere means? Adhere, adhesive, what does that mean?
Like,
Sticks to it, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Adhesive, right, is something that sticks to another thing. Cohesive is when something fits together and sticks. Right? Adhesive is one on top of the other, right? Kind of two-dimensional that way. Okay? Cohesive is even stronger, it's this way. Does that make sense? Okay? So when it coheres with a web. So look, we all have different, I might actually. Okay. Let's use this as a springboard. So this theory is closely related to relativism. Here's an example to show you what I mean. So a person, let's say there was a person raised to believe that some races of people are less important than other races. For example, the Nazi regime and its view of Jews. It had similar views to other races, to other particular subgroups of people, but the Jews was the big one, right? Okay, so think about the Nazi regime and its view of Jews. Think about somebody who's born and raised in the Nazi regime. Okay? Their web of beliefs, in other words, the way they see the world, the conclusions they have about the world, one of those or several of those are the conclusions that say some races of people are less important than other races of people. Okay? It's not necessarily just a bias or a prejudice that they've been brainwashed into. They've been born into this, and this is the way they see the world. Does that make sense? You know there were people like that, right? Okay? This is how they see the world. Okay. So look, a person raised to believe that races of people are less important than others, beliefs like that will fit into their web that's already there. Their web of bias and lies, right? That's already there. Somebody who's not born in the Nazi regime, they're presented with similar information and they're going to reject that and say, that's not true. That's not true at all. Now, for those people, it really isn't true. For these people, it really is true. What does that sound like to you? Yeah, relativism. We've got two competing truth claims that are the same. So for somebody born in the Nazi regime, they're going to accept the truth because it fits with their web. They're going to accept the truth that some races of people are less important than others. Somebody not born in the Nazi regime, okay, born outside of that same time frame, right, but born outside of that mindset, outside of that web of beliefs, is going to go, races of people aren't more or less important than other races? What? So for them, it's really true that people are equal, and for them, it's really true that people are not equal. Got it? But because it fits within their web, that's what makes it true. If they don't just randomly believe it, like in relativism, where you just pick your belief, right, as a matter of preference, it has to fit inside your web for it to be true. Is that kind of clear? You see the small difference between it and relativism. It's not just a preference issue, it's a fit issue. Are you good? You guys are looking a little glazed. I'm a little bit worried. You okay? Should I just keep going? Stop me if it gets crazy, okay? More crazy than this. Put it that way. Okay, so the result is that contradictory truth claims actually are actually true. Okay? For two different people. Contradictory truth claims are both actually true for two different people. Okay. That's the basic claim. Let's score this.
But we barely know.
But you barely know it?
Yeah.
Well, let's go through this, and if you still have questions, then we'll talk about it. It's very relativistic, so a lot of things that we talked about in relativism apply to this one as well. And we're going to talk about it again on Friday, too. Okay? So let's score it out and see. What do you guys think? Does it explain all or most truths?
No.
No? Remember the truths what are the truths that we have to explain? Look back in your notes if you have to.
Actual truth
Moral truths,
Oh,
right?
moral
Physical
truths,
laws,
yeah.
everyday things.
So
yes.
it claims something is true if it coheres with the web.
Yes.
So then scope explain all that's true.
Yeah, so like mathematics, physical
Depends
laws,
on
everyday
what
things, moral
we
truths, and
already
subjective truths.
Yeah, it might depend on the web, right? How big is your web?
Yeah.
Right?
It's closely related to relativism, so it's going to be false.
Yeah. Yeah, it does depend. That's a good answer. It depends on your web, but does that leave us on firm ground or shaky ground?
Yeah, but
For a-
Shaky.
shaky, right? Because for a theory that we're looking for that is widespread, right? If it's dependent on each individual person, that's still pretty shaky. It's not going to explain most truths. As a theory, it's not going to. Okay? So no. Does it explain the data better?
better than relativism, but we don't know what we're comparing it to yet, so it's still a question mark.
Okay. Does it explain it better than relativism?
I think it does, since, kind of the webbing, it has its own structural support, like each end has their own.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I feel like they can stand on their own with it.
Yeah, because you can't just go pick it. It has to be based on something.
Yeah.
Exactly
see,
right.
there you go.
Exactly right.
But theory does not explain at all what the center of the web is. The center of the web could be relativism.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't know that the web is strong because you don't know what the freak
Agreed.
web is.
Agreed.
So, would you say question mark?
I would say question mark because we're comparing multiple things here. We don't know any of them what relativism is.
Yeah.
So
and
better
we know
than
it's better than anything else. We don't know what.
so better than relativism, but it's still but it still has flaws.
Yeah.
I mean, think about a spider web. Even a spider web has anchors,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Even a puzzle has corners and borders, right? So I feel like that is better. Like you said, Tabitha, they're not just cherry picking what we want, right? Based on what we want.
Well, yeah.
Right? At least there's some kind of system there. But you also see that there can be vastly different systems and they both still be okay, right? Nazi, not Nazi, right? Those are really different and the stakes are really high. And they both can exist under coherentism. So there's still some really big flaws, right? Because we don't know the center of that web. So there's some flaws there, but it's better than relativism. Okay. So yeah, I'm going to go with the question mark too. How about easy to believe?
No.
No.
Why not?
Because of the
Mhm.
Because,
contradictory.
yeah,
It
because two
could.
people can be in the same room and have the entirely different webs.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it's more life.
Is it easier to believe? Is it easier to believe than relativism?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, I'm with you. I think that there's a few more. It's a little less crazy than relativism. Okay. Does it agree? Does it fit with your firmly established beliefs about the world? Your intuition, the way that you see things, the way that you're like, this is how it works. Does it fit with that?
Is
I
that
think
not
that's
a
what they're-
I mean, better. I think it's better.
Yeah, it's better than relative.
It fits with the world a lot because everybody has anchors, but nobody really knows what actual truths are. It's all based on opinions. And that's kind of what the web and everybody's tied. The mass opinion is what people think the truth is. I mean,
Mhm.
mass opinion is what is right and wrong. You don't know the actual truth of what's right and wrong. So it fits with the world very well, but it's still a crappy theory.
That
Yeah.
seems to be going around a lot nowadays.
Crappy theories, or this one in particular?
Well, just just talking about like what people believe, and there's all kinds of contradictory beliefs
Yeah.
and everything.
Yeah, why do you think polls are so, not polls, right, but
Yeah.
POLLS, polls. Why do you think polls are so popular and so like everybody wants to know that kind of stuff?
Because people are like,
It's like what the general
slow
public
around.
believes.
Right, and have you noticed that what the general public believes becomes
Believable.
reality?
Yeah.
What the deal really is, right?
Yeah.
When really, polls only tell us what most people think about a certain thing. They don't tell us truth. The only truth they tell us is this many people think this about this issue.
That's kind of tricky though. Have you ever seen the experiment with the gumball machine? They took a gumball machine and they brought 1,000 people. They had every single person try to guess how many gumballs were in the gumball machine.
Uh-huh.
Nobody knows. 0 people got it right out of every trial. There were 50 trials. So 50,000 people, 0 correct answers. But after they tallied every single guess together and did it at the end of every trial, it was exactly right. So no one
That's
person
freaky.
could guess how many gumballs were in the machine. But if you took 50,000 people and you all had them guess, the average guess was 100% correct of all 50 trials.
The average guess.
When you add
When
them all
you average
together,
it out,
divide
yeah.
it up.
Yeah.
Every
Interesting.
single time was correct.
Okay, so fit with your firmly established beliefs. I would say.
I mean, so basically, according to that theory, the masses is always correct. When one individual person never knows the truth.
It's
On that experiment. But
Yeah.
Oh, on the experiment, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to say no because we see that there are things that are true, whether they fit into somebody's web or not. Consider the flat earthers that we've talked about before,
Yeah.
okay? Or people that, yeah, they're like a group, I guess.
yeah, but could you call that a web because it doesn't have an anchor? What's an anchor to?
Well, they would have an
A
anchor.
flat earth.
Well, it's a flat earth.
It's anchored to a very flat earth. Okay, is this theory simple? I mean, on the outset, sure, right? Web fits truth. I mean, right. But does it, when you work it out and trying to live by it, is it simple? I mean, I think it's, again, simpler because it's a little more grounded than relativism, right? But still leads to a lot of like,
As long as you're in the same place around the same people with the beliefs, you're fine. But if you go anywhere else,
right.
Yeah.
There's a lot of as long as.
Yeah.
Right? As long as your anchor's in the right place, as long as your center is good, as long as you're with the right people, that's too shaky for me. We're talking about truth here, people. Okay? That's too iffy. Okay. So, better than relativism, and I know this doesn't reflect it because it's the same scorecard relativism had. Better than relativism, it's still shaky.
Yeah.
Are you down?
Yeah.
Feel like we're good so far? Alright, let's quit. Let's quit. Okay? I will see you on Friday. Hopefully we'll finish this bad boy up.